This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome into another edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. I am, of course, your slightly above average host or below average host, depending upon what your opinion was of me after you watched all those Pros versus Joes drafts this past week and the week before on the FFPC YouTube channel. I just want to remind you before we get into tonight's broadcast, the FFPC Main Event slow drafts are off and running. If you want to take your shot at $1 million, you can do so right now at myffpc.com. Those will be running basically for the next month and a half or so. And then the live drafts will kick off probably in about a week and a half here. Multiple Footballguys Players Championship drafts are filling daily. $350 could win you a $500,000 grand prize. You won't be waiting long on those drafts. Those are available at myffpc.com as well. If you like best ball, like tonight's guest, we'll be talking about the majority of the time. The FFPC Best Ball Tournament, $125 to enter, $200,000 grand prize, as well as the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament, $35 for a $10,000 grand prize. That is more than 90% full. So if you want to get in either of those drafts, get in now while the getting's good. If you want to play in the Dynasty startups that we have, we've never had a Dynasty League full. We got over 1,000 of them going on at myffpc.com. We'll run those for about the next month or so, the slow drafts anyway. So if you want to take on the year-round challenge of high-stakes fantasy pool, you can do that starting at $77 all the way up to $5,000. Plenty of slow, live, and sit-and-go best ball options at myffpc.com if you prefer playing in the closed 12-team leagues as well. Let's bring in tonight's guest. This is the final RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown before the NFL season starts, so you won't see another one of these broadcasts until after week one, and then we will go weekly until the start of the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. But right now, this will be the last one we have for about a month or so. I'm talking tonight with an FFPC player, a longtime FFPC player that won 14, count them, 14 FFPC and Footballguys leagues alone in 2021. He's won a boatload more besides that. We're going to talk about his Pros versus Joes draft. We'll analyze that tonight, as well as some of the other players he's been targeting this summer in his Footballguys Players Championship drafts, and much, much more. You follow him on Twitter, at Brian_Harris_ 2021 14-time FFPC high-stakes champion, Brian Harris. Welcome to the program, man. Good to have you.
Thanks, Balky. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm still relaxing after 6 Pros versus Joes drafts and basically the last week and a half, but it was a lot of fun. And you participated in this. I gotta refresh my memory now. You were week one on Monday or Tuesday? Monday. Okay. So you were in the second live Pros versus Joes draft, participated in that. I think you were in the 12 spot in that.
Yep.
All right. So let's get into that and sort of get your take on how the draft unfolded and sort of what your plan was and how well you executed that plan. Number one, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson fighting for the first string carries right now in New England. You said, screw it, I'm getting both of them. How much of that was part of the plan? Why did you decide on zeroing in on getting both those Patriots running backs?
I didn't really zero in. It just kind of went that way. When it started out, when I got Najee, and then I think it was Josh Jacobs after that, which I don't really care for too much. I got Damian Harris because I like to get at least 3 running backs in those first 10 rounds in the best ball. And then when Ramondre was there, which I like just as much as I like Damian Harris, maybe he might even have a little more juice. So kind of like him a little bit more this year. And there was both there. And I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of like locking down 3 good running back spots here. And in best ball, it's important. I don't like to handcuff too much, but those were 2 guys late. So, and that's not like you're taking McCaffrey and somebody or his handcuff or whatever at that time. But you're taking two guys late like that. I think both of those guys pair together to make one good running back week in, week out in the best ball for sure. If you look at the numbers, from last year and things like that, the game logs and whatnot.
Is that something you would do in Footballguys or the main event? Would you pair those guys together in that, or is this strictly a format-based decision?
I probably would pick one over the other in those and kind of go for it that way, because I wouldn't want to make that decision every week either. Yeah, I probably actually would lean Ramondre, to be honest with you. I like him a little bit better. Even though Damian Harris, I think he had like 15 touchdowns or something last year.
Yeah.
I like Stevenson's juice a little bit more, and the value it's almost like right there too, a little bit better. So I like them about equal, and can get Ramondre around or two later. So I'm cool with that.
And you say equal too. And this was, I think about when we launched FFPC drafts in January. I mean, Harris was up here and Stevenson was down here. Now we get the word that Stevenson's not only working on his pass catching chops, but he's getting stuff with reps with the first team. Now all of a sudden you're looking at Damian Harris at the 807, Ramondre Stevenson at the 901 in the FFPC best ball tournament. Do you envision Stevenson leapfrogging Harris, where Stevenson all of a sudden becomes the more expensive value?
Well, I mean, it is the New England backfield too, which is always crazy. So I don't know. I like them both kind of this year where they're going, late, like especially if you're going to take two running backs early, hit some receivers up and come back and take a running back. I like to hit one of those guys as your third guy. Like last year, I did that a lot with James Conner. I did him everywhere. He was like my third back in that situation. And it paid off pretty good. So if you miss on one of those early guys and you hit on that one, it's okay or whatever. But so I'm trying to single out some guys there. I'm still early in the draft season. I'm still figuring things out for the year. I'm trying to do my best to draft as late as possible, because I think I'm more efficient the later I draft. When I look at years past, and I'm trying to get more efficient every year. So that's part of that process. But as far as those guys go, those are kind of targets in that ballpark. Hopefully they don't creep up too far, but especially if one of those guys gets hurt or something, one of them's going to shoot up big time. Yeah,
absolutely. No question there. You touched on Josh Jacobs just now in answering that question. He is kind of still a little bit in a free fall right now. Now you drafted him in Pros versus Joes at the 601. So you got him in the 6th round. Right now in the FFPC best ball tournament, shout out to Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter, fantasymojo.com, who supplies us with all this great ADP. Josh Jacobs at the 511. So basically you're getting him right at value in that. At what point, how high would you go to draft Josh Jacobs? Because obviously we know you're taking him at the 601 in the best ball format, but how do you handle him if his value goes back up or down, quite frankly?
That's not a guy I'm really targeting. That's kind of just the way that draft fell. Like he's still young enough where I would take him at a value there, especially the way that draft went for me. I needed to get a running back there in that spot. And he was the best guy at the time that I thought anyway. I mean, it's debatable, but I needed to get somebody there. And the way that draft went, I got Najee in the 1st round in that one. And then, I kind of went a different direction for a little bit there, and there's a reason for that. But Jacobs is not somebody I'm really targeting. I don't know how they're going to use those running backs in Las Vegas, especially. Yeah, it's like McDaniels. Is he going to bring that New England system over there where everybody's getting pieces of the ball for different game to game? I mean, I don't know how it's going to go down. I was never really a big Josh Jacobs fan. But I also see there's less opportunities for him to catch the ball with Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow and Waller healthy. All those guys, if they stay healthy, it's going to be. And without him catching the ball, I'm not really too interested in him at all.
When you said you drafted Josh Jacobs based on the construction of your team at the 601 in Pros versus Joes, you took Harris in the 1st round, and then you said you went a different way, and there was a reason for that. Mark Andrews, Cortland Sutton, Josh Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown all went before you took Josh Jacobs. What was the reason that you went away from the running back position, drafting at that 12 spot in this draft?
Well, what happened was Najee fell there, which I thought was good value. And then Mark Andrews, I'm not going to pass Mark Andrews. I'm just not going to pass him up right there in this format. I like him as my best tight end this year overall.
Okay.
But so in this format, but or maybe any format, but so when I'm working my best ball teams, and not that I do too many of them anymore, I used to do a heck of a lot more than I do now. Now I'm trying to get more money into the big league, especially with the main event being $1 million. I'm trying to get a lot more money in that. Mm-hmm. So but the way that worked out is when you take you're gonna sacrifice somewhere when you take a tight end or the quarterbacks this early. And sometimes I know that rule, the golden rule, so-called of best ball or whatever, you taking that quarterback early and that tight end early, it kind of screws you up for the rest of the draft. But
it could be, and not everybody subscribes to that rule. You know what I mean? That there are some people that say it's difficult to win that way, but some other people say, hell, I can win that way. Well,
I looked at it this way. I was trying to, I got Najee, so I know that I've got a great start at running back there. So I have a little wiggle room to work with getting a second and a third, which I think I did a fair job of getting a decent stable of backs. Like I said, I like to get in those best balls. I typically like to get 3 running backs in those top 10. Mm-hmm. And I typically like to get 4 strong receivers, but that wasn't the case because I couldn't work those yellows in there like I liked them. But so my approach on this was I needed an edge because this is, it's going to be a room full of good drafters, and I needed an edge in this. So I went with the guys like Mark Andrews, who had the most 30-point games from any tight end last year. And he's on the rise still. I think he's still on the rise. And then I came back and I didn't love the receiver. I love Sutton there. I like Sutton in that spot big time. I think he's going to creep up probably as this draft season goes on. He might be creeping up into the earlier third, maybe into the second. So I like him there. And then there wasn't any other receiver there that I was really in love with that I could remember. I was considering maybe Waddle there. But I said, you know what, I'm going to go with the quarterback who had the most 30-point games last year, and not to say it bases everything on last year, because that's not how I like to think. I want to think about this year, but I don't see any, there's obviously there's only positive things happening there for him to even grow even more this year, with the progression of Gabe Davis and adding James Cook and progression of Dawson Knox and so forth. So he had, I think, 7 games over 30 last year. So I kind of built it that way on a thinking best ball, mm-hmm. and I know that typically if I was just going to do a different confined league, because this is a confined league, but a different one, I'd probably do things a little bit different. But I'm trying to go for it here with this start.
I'm trying to bring up your draft board here so the viewers can see it. But while I look for that, let's talk, because you talked about the running backs here and Harris, Josh Jacobs, we talked about already. You get Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson as well. Then you don't take another running back here until round 17, and that was Chris Evans. Now, Chris Evans and Samaje Perine, that argument, I want to say was going back and forth probably in the pre-draft, like pre-NFL draft. Now it seems like Chris Evans is sort of the guy du jour for high-stakes fantasy drafters for the Joe Mixon handcuff here. Are you of the belief that if Mixon does get hurt, Chris Evans is the guy that you want to start over Perine?
I don't like Perine. I don't know why. It's just not sexy enough for me, I guess. I think Chris Evans is the sexier play. If I like his tape. I think it was Michigan. I liked his game out of Michigan. His receiving chops. I think that Perine, he could come in. He could be the guy. But I'm taking a shot at this point in time. I already have my 4 running backs at this point in time. So I'm taking a shot on a guy who could be like, if Mixon goes on, they gave this guy an opportunity. It could be like something special. I don't know, but it's just more exciting than Perine to me. Obviously, he's younger. He's Perine hasn't been too sexy. He's been serviceable, I would say. But at that point in time, I'm trying to get a couple of guys that if they got the opportunity to smash, even maybe later in the season, if somebody got hurt or whatever, especially Chris Evans, because I think it's pretty good, pass catcher and stuff. So I kind of like guys like that, premium type handcuff, guys that I think could pop. But he's one of those guys. I'm not necessarily, in love with anybody like that down the line, but I will look for those guys. Those guys that have that sneaky upside. at that point, because you got nothing to lose. I mean, a lot of times you look back at these drafts after round 10, it's like all these guys did nothing or whatever. It's like it happens a lot of the times. Like when you're every year you're in the draft and it's round 15, you're like, oh, I gotta get this guy. But then you look back and you're like, these guys all stunk, like when you gotta get lucky. You gotta get lucky to hit on those guys after the 10th round. So I'm looking for some upside there. I don't want to take any washed up guys. I'm looking for guys that are on the incline. The guys that didn't have their best season yet.
We talked about this on the Pros versus Joes on Tuesday night, the final one, and we were talking about Eric Rubin, the Jungle Cats, who won the overall Pros versus Joes title last year. And he was obviously helped by, guys like Cooper Kupp in the 4th round, Deebo Samuel in like the 9th or whatever. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown on the 15th, and even Darrell Williams in the 18th, which obviously helped him as well. So as important as it is to get the first part of your draft right, it's almost just as important to make sure that you hit on a couple of late round picks, because if you do that, you are head and shoulders above 80% of the rest of the draft.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, if you could hit on those guys,
but that's the tricky part, because it's not easy to do.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You brought up Cortland Sutton before. And as I bring up the draft board, and I don't know how easy this is to see for the viewers out there, but Brian, you were picking in the 12 spot here. Cortland Sutton was your pick at the 312 after Harris and Mark Andrews. You went with the Cortland Sutton, Josh Allen combo at the 3-4. So now I'm looking at this now. Tim Patrick is hurt, tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Denver right now has not signed anybody. I don't know if there's anybody out there to sign. I don't even know if there's going to be anybody out there to sign after cuts that is going to make a fantasy dent. KJ Hamler obviously takes a step forward here. You make the argument for Jerry Jeudy as well. But I keep hearing Cortland Sutton from a lot of high-stakes owners, including the ones we talked to in the Pros versus Joes broadcast as well. How high? I think you said 2nd round. You could see Cortland Sutton creeping into the 2nd round by the time everybody's drafting in the main event in Las Vegas in September.
Well, as we get closer every year, the rounds shrink. The guys that were in the 3rd are now going in the 2nd because people get hurt. Weird stuff happens. A guy gets caught hitting his girlfriend. He's out. Whatever. I mean, all this stuff happens, and it seems every year this happens, and these rounds just shrink and shrink and shrink up. So I could see that. Especially, I think that he's got really big upside, this year. Like for example, I think of, not that he's going to be Cooper Kupp but like last year, you have a guy like Cooper Kupp who's always been good, and then you give him Matt Stafford. Well, last year Sutton was coming off the ACL, which I didn't like anyway, so I was kind of off him. The quarterback situation was junk. So this year he's a fresh year off the ACL, and he's got Russell Wilson. So, and he's still young. He's still ascending. He popped some games early last year, but then he kind of fizzled out. I think, a lot of times these guys coming off these injuries, that happens. It's hit or miss. They're inconsistent, and, for a good year or so. But so it's a speculative play that he's going to, be a lot better with Russell Wilson. We'll find out what happens. Who knows? It's, it's a shot, and all you could do is kind of take educated shots, and just hope for the best and see what happens, But I know I like him a lot there, as far as what else is going there too. I like what what you see on Twitter and all this other stuff with him and how he's looking and stuff with Russell Wilson. So I could see why there's some buzz on Cortland Sutton there for sure. Now the Tim Patrick thing, I don't know if that I get kind of aggravated with that because I don't think Tim Patrick really affects his value at all. No, because I kind of don't like that he got hurt because now everybody's going to bump Cortland Sutton up. Where I don't. I think that Tim Patrick's always like a compliment. He was like okay, well, Cortland Sutton's not playing. Tim Patrick's the guy. Like that kind of seemed like it took up his space or something. I don't really think of Tim Patrick as. I mean, he's a solid player, but he's a guy. He's a solid player, but I don't really see him affecting anything.
He's not a needle mover, in other words.
Yeah, I don't.
And you can make the case that the perception of him is a needle mover in the wrong way for Sutton fans right now.
Right. Yeah, I think that I would like them to be healthy, and I still would have taken Sutton and probably get more shares. Now we might creep up a little bit more, and I miss out on a few shares, but that's fine. I don't want to overdraft anybody either. Right. I want to try to work good guys at good value. Every time we end up getting hyped up on a player, start overdrafting players, that's a recipe for disaster. You want to get those guys that outperform where you're drafting them, and that's how you win these leagues. Not taking the guys, at their peak value, because they can only go down from there.
Excellent analysis there, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on everything you said about Patrick and Sutton and how it's being perceived by the high stakes players out there and what's going to happen with them now. Shifting our focus to Tennessee, AJ Brown is in Philadelphia. They've traded for Robert Woods. They obviously used that first round pick on Treylon Burks. When you look at the Tennessee passing game, Brian, besides Burks, besides Woods, is there any other receiver worth considering in an FFPC best ball slim like you just drafted in Pros versus Joe's? Is there any other Tennessee receiver that is worth his salt late in a Footballguys draft? How do you see that situation?
Yeah, you're looking at my drafts, and I know where you're going with this. Was as a Westbrook-Ikhine. Now, he's a guy who I have been taking early on here the draft season for me, because I'm not too many drafts in like normally are. I'm trying to hold off. I got, I'm going to do a million drafts, but I have been taking Westbrook-Ikhine late as a guy because he's always there, and it's always like 18th, whatever round it is. Not that he could be huge in best ball more so, because I don't know if he's going to pop big games. I don't know if that's his game or not. But in Footballguys, but I'd have taken him in best ball regardless. But I do like him better probably in Footballguys later. I think that I don't like guys coming off ACLs. I don't care if they say they're 100%. If it was, obviously the earlier it was last year, the better. But I don't know if Robert Woods might have been halfway through or something. I don't remember. So I'm not a Bobby Trees fan, and I'm not. I do like what I see on Twitter from Treylon Burks, but I don't want to overreact to the rookie hype out there either. And Tannehill's not, he's not Patrick Mahomes.
He is what he is.
He is what he is. You know what I mean? And he has games, and he's serviceable, and he's good. But I don't. So I'll look for that guy. I think it's probably his third year. Guys like that, guys in their third year who could pop maybe, over, like I said, outperform the value in which they're drafted. And he's a guy that's there. I saw some good puff pieces online too recently, which I don't like to see that if I'm taking a guy, because then I can't get him. But just looking for guys like that, because you don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, Robert Woods, I'm not in on him at all, or any guy that's coming off an injury like that, an ACL or an Achilles or something.
At least the first year, right?
Yeah, after the first year. Not to mention Robert Woods. It's not like he's 22 or something. He's
right. Yep.
That's he's I don't know. I'm out on Woods. So if I'm out on Woods, I'm skeptical of the rookie play there. Although the upside's massive, I guess, with Treylon Burks. I just don't know. Is this like, like last year, if you remember, it was like Terrace Marshall was tearing it up in the preseason, and he looks like a beast. And you watch the preseason games, he's a beast, and then he's like disappeared. Now, not to say that's going to happen, because Treylon Burks got a different pedigree. They traded there, and they got him in the first round and stuff like that. So you got to factor that in. They're going to have to use him, and I hope he's good. But I don't have a lot of trust in those rookies until I see them, unless they're, like last year, I was really excited about Jamar Chase, because when I saw him in college, I was like, this guy's unreal. Who is this guy? I was like, who's this one guy? And then and then obviously they took him that early in the first round. He's a special talent. So that's kind of different than Burks. I mean, obviously this group of rookie receivers might be the best in a while, though, that I can remember. A lot of first round guys, a lot of talent out there. At least according to Twitter, they're all the best receivers in the world right now. Sky Moore's, he's the best, and Treylon Burks is the best, and these guys are all that. I don't know. They could be, but a lot of times these early rookies, either they're going to smash, or most of the time they're going to be inconsistent for you, especially early on in the season. Some guys come on later in the season, but so the point is, if there's that much, inconsistency. I mean, who else is there? Austin Hooper, blah, blah,
right? Yep.
Blah. So
no real threats out of the backfield for catching passes either. I mean,
no. Derrick Henry's not, he's not the poster child for catching balls out of the path. But so Ikhine is a shot. All he is a shot. You're not paying much for him. I mean, if it doesn't pan out, he's gone out to the pasture. You throw him out and back into the pool. He's low risk. So
Well, you bring this is interesting because you've taken Westbrook-Ikhine in more than one draft. Are you afraid of loading up on a player like that? Because it's clear you like the players leap forward here. This is his third year. You like the chance for him to leap forward. Robert Woods just turned 30. Situation, opportunity around him, if there's injuries or whatever, there's a good shot for Westbrook-Ikhine. A lot of people, myself included sometimes, I will try to divvy up my late round shares among a lot of players to try to hit on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it is in various leagues, rather than load up on one player in a lot of leagues late, even if it is low risk. Is Westbrook-Ikhine the type of guy that you would not be afraid to take in a ton of your drafts because the risk is so low?
Yeah, I guess it depends. It depends on what's there. I'm going to stay true to my projections of where I got these guys, and it's the next guy up at that point. If he's gone, I take this guy. If that guy's gone, and that's how I'm going to approach it. So a lot of it kind of, until I started playing volume, I never really thought about it. But sometimes you want to diversify, right?
Yeah.
And then you look back and you're like, man, if I just took my guys in more leagues, like I would have hit on all these leagues, but I was diversifying, or I was paying attention to the bye weeks here because I'm trying to worry about the record stuff. And, so like last year I hit on like some of the guys I hit on late was like Debo. So I had Debo quite a bit later. But then I was diversifying with Ayuk because I thought Ayuk would be good too. I thought they were like right there, both of them. And half of those leagues that I took Ayuk, and I was like, I wish I would have took Debo. So it's tough to say if you're going all in on the same guys, or if you're going to diversify a little bit. And so it's a tough balance. But I think at the end of the day, some advice would be to just stick to your guys and go for it. And if you smash, you smash it. If you don't, you come back again. Whatever. So.
And you bring this up about going with the same guy. I remember drafting in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. I don't know however many years ago it was. And Brandon Hakey, who we should really get on this podcast at some point, was drafting all these Chiefs one year, including a guy named Kareem Hunt, who was drafting him, 6-7 rounds sometimes above ADP. Just had to get this guy on his team. And I remember, Farrell Elliott, the commissioner, my co-host on High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on Fridays, he did the trophy presentation for everybody who won all these leagues the following year. And it was a coronation for Brandon Hakey because he went in every single league he could. Kareem Hunt, Mahomes, all these Chiefs guys, he loaded up on them on all his leagues, and he crushed it. He absolutely crushed it. But it's pretty rare, Brian, and I think you'd agree with me, it's pretty rare to do that on a year-to-year basis, and that's what makes diversifying so much more attractive when you're drafting here in July and August, because you may not hit on every single league, but you will hit on some, and it only takes one to win the $1 million in the FFPC main event.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'm going to say, I'll change my analysis of that to say, I used to be like, let's just diversify so much. Now I think it should be like 70% of leagues. If you're targeting certain players, like last year, if you were targeting Cooper Kupp, you were a happy person.
You're retired. You are retired from fantasy football. You're living on an island.
Exactly. Right. So it's one of those things. So maybe like just the balance of it all, maybe 60 or 70% of it more of my guys, and diversify. I know exactly what you're saying, because there's sometimes like the diversification does help, but I'm just trying to get more efficient with it every year and try to just keep grinding and try to keep figuring things out, because you can never stop. You can never stop figuring things out. I know some of the diversification. Well, speaking of diversification, some of the best teams that I have when I look back sometimes are like the outside of the box teams I decided to draft. Like, like there was a league last year, and I'm like, and I look back, I think it was, it might have been. I had a lot of teams in the football guys in the chase at the end, but there was one team, and I looked that finished the best in the chase. Okay, because like another thing I have is trying to, and I never thought about this until now, is that okay, you could get a lot of teams in the chase, but you got to try to win an overall, and it's a kind of a different drafting mentality, I think. So that's kind of where I'm trying to go to now. And I was looking at that team that finished the best in that, out of that tournament, which like might have been like 70th, I think, which I think it was the bubble. I think I just finished some money there or whatever for a free main or something.
Right.
And I looked at that team and I'm like, wow, this was one that I was really like, at the end of the season or whatever it was. And I was kind of like, taking something a little different than what I normally do. So diversification could pay off like that, where you could hit on a big one, so I still want to do that, but just not as much. I think I have a good feel for the players. And I've been getting better at it every year. It's been like work in progress for over the years, because you start out and you stink. Well, you think you're good, and you start playing online high stakes, and then because you're winning your home leagues and stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, I gotta figure things out here. It's like anything else, So I start playing for years and keep rolling my money over, and just trying to keep being more efficient and just keep going, and that's it. Like last year, I think I did a lot of the football guys, where this year I'm going to do a lot more main events,
Sure.
So yeah. I'm going to flip the script on that. So, and try to win $1 million.
Tyler Lockett, as I bring up your pros versus Joe's draft from the 12 spot, and we look at it right here. And again, I don't know if the listeners can see it, or the viewers can see it, I should say. Tyler Lockett for you was your 9-12. Yeah, 9-12 pick here. So you grab him at that 9-12 turn. As you look at your football guys drafts, as you look at the Seattle Seahawks offense situation this year, is he a target for you?
No.
Is he a fade? Or is it just, if he's there, he's there?
He's a best ball only target for me. Like, okay. I don't like him even with Russell Wilson in redraft as much as I like best ball, because he's so inconsistent. But he did have monster games with Russell Wilson. Catches some deep on, but he's so inconsistent, he'll drive you crazy. And obviously now the quarterback situation there now is terrible. So I'm not in on him really at all. But is
that the same with Metcalf, by the way, Brian? Are you also not in on Metcalf because of the quarterback situation?
I'm not in on Metcalf as much. Okay. And more than I am Lockett. Obviously, I would take Metcalf over Lockett all day. So probably anybody. But I mean, I just you have to acknowledge that you can't just ignore the situations there.
Exactly.
Who knows? They might get Garoppolo, or they might get somebody else. Who knows what's going to happen there? But you can only work with what you know right now. So Lockett's not a guy I'm targeting usually, but in this situation in a best ball, I know he pops big games. Hopefully he can pop some with whoever the new quarterback is. But at that time, like I said too, I didn't like my receivers where I was. I only had 2. I like to try to get in these best ball. I like to try to get like 4 in that first 10 to feel good. But in this one here, I with going with that quarterback, the big quarterback, the big tight end early, I had to change things up. I also took a Dawson Knox kind of as my first flex there, to say, I guess, or whatever, or one of my flexes there that I could use in a replacement of that fourth, trying to get 4 receivers in that first 10. Lockett was a guy that was there, pops big games. I don't like Lockett. It's weird because I say I don't like Lockett. I say I don't like Josh Jacobs that much. I don't like Tyler Boyd, who's another guy I took in there. But I don't want to be – and one thing I've learned is that you can't just say, oh, I don't like this guy for whatever bias, and don't take him at the right value or the right time, because that's not good either. You gotta throw your biases, emotions out the window sometimes, and do what's best for the construction of the roster. So at that point in time, I knew what I was going with most of the picks. I was going to be going receiver here from here on out. And he was the best guy at the time with probably the best big game potential.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. After the 8th round, 5 of your next 6 picks were receivers, really hammering that home after you already had the 3 running backs early, and then you get Ramondre Stevenson, obviously, in the 10th round there as well. So I understand the logistics of, because I had this explained to me. Oh God, how many? It's like 10 years ago. And there was a guy who was playing in a 30-team fantasy basketball competition, 30 teams. And somebody was asking him about this. I was listening to the podcast because I was playing a lot of fantasy basketball back then. And he's like, well, what do you do here? Like, how do you construct this team? And the guy's like, well, it really depends what I do with my first pick, because that's going to dictate what I do the rest of it. In the same vein, you can have, the best laid plans in Pros versus Joes, the Football Guys Players Championship, the main event. But depending upon how you spend those first few picks, that is how the greats like yourself separate themselves from the rest of the field to knowing how to adjust on the fly, not only with how the draft's going, but how the team that you're forming, because you have to be able to get the pieces to fit together. You have a running back, tight end, receiver, quarterback, receiver, running back to start off your first 6 rounds. And Brian, I think at that point you realize, okay, here's my first 25% of my draft. Now I know what I need to do the rest of the way. Now I now I know the players I need to target the rest of the way as well.
Well, on every draft, knowing your format and your roster spots and everything, I kind of have an idea of what I want to do as far as my roster limits goes and my construction of how many I would like to have of each. Now, obviously that changes because every draft is different. There's more than one way to skin a cat in this. You could shoot yourself in the foot and be dead and not have a chance. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. But there's so many ways to win. But obviously there's certain percentages of certain ways that win more than others. So I try to fit that mold. And I know that when I'm building a team, if I know that I only have two or three receivers in the first half of the draft, I need to load it because I know that I'm shooting to get at least 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, receivers at the time, depending on how things work out. And I'm going to have to make up for that quickly there. You don't want to wait too long. And next thing you know, the guys you're taking long shots on are guys you're going to need to depend on, and that's not good. So you got to kind of just go with that. The guys that come out that I see, like Mojo posts, like guys drafting like 8 running backs to start a draft. I don't know. I think that's just insane. I don't know how you can win like that. It's crazy.
I'm with you. I can't get on board with that.
There's got to be some balance or some strategy or method to it. That many positions when you have X amount of starters and X amount of guys, things like that. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I've seen it. Hey, it's their money if they want to put it out there, and if they win, hey, whatever, it happens. But I'm playing the percentages that it's not going to happen very often. So.
And I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you 100%. Let's talk about Mark Andrews, because I know you touched on him right away when we started the podcast. You picked him at the 201. You believe that he is your number 1 tight end this year over Travis Kelce. The fact that Marquise Brown is now in Arizona, they only ever shot Bateman and a couple other really unproven guys there. Are FFPC players in general undervaluing this guy, letting him slip to the end of the first, the early second round?
Well, in the format, I don't know how. I mean, obviously, you could say that those two guys are like tied almost, right? So and then I go to target availability, age and incline. These guys, like for example, I'm sure Kelce may or may not have could have had his best years, already. Or Mark Andrews could be the next Kelce that we're drafting. Everybody's drafting in the first round next year. So if they're that close, and there's a lot of, obviously there's not that anybody's that good on Kansas City anymore with Tyreek Hill. I mean, obviously Juju, MVS, Sky Moore, things like that. But in Baltimore, it's like Bateman and Andrews, and he's already been like, Lamar Jackson's not like, some prolific superhuman passer like a Herbert or Josh Allen or Mahomes. He does go to Andrews a lot. And I don't know how he could, not keep going to him. It's not like they added anybody, like you said, with Hollywood Brown gone too. So I just like the upward trend of Andrews over Kelce. And he comes at a better value in the drafts right now for at the most. Sometimes you'll see him go so early ahead of Kelce or whatnot, whatever. But I like him in the tight end premium. Probably over Kelce. Like I said, he also in best ball, he popped more 30-point games. Now, will Kelce now, go to the moon because Tyreek Hill's gone? I don't know. I think Tyreek Hill being gone might hurt Kelce a little bit. I don't know. So you don't know. Who's to say? But Kelce's obviously he's older. Tight ends last a little while, so that's not too big of a concern. But I just like to think about things from a perspective of, like, if I'm going to compare those two guys, the fact that, like I said, Mark Andrews had more big games. He's on the rise. He's younger. I don't know what he's in. Maybe 26, 27. I don't even know. He's a primary target, just like Kelce. And I don't know. I'm just feeling him a little more so this year. I would, and I'd like to stack him up with Jackson if I could too, because he has big game potential too. So if you hit on both of those guys and hit some weeks where you get like,
you
get 60 out of those two guys. That's pretty nice.
That's massive. That is a massive, massive week. You touched on earlier in the conversation about Dawson Knox, how you made him, and I'll bring up the draft board right now for anybody looking at this. Dawson Knox, you selected at the 801 as essentially your first flex player here. Tight end premium format obviously makes Dawson Knox a little bit more attractive than he normally would be in a, just a standard full PPR. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Jamison Crowder, Singletary, James Cook, all these guys in Buffalo. Why should FFPC players be zeroing in on making sure they grab a guy like Dawson Knox off this Buffalo offense, even considering all the talent that's around him?
Well, a couple things. If I took him for a couple reasons. Number one, I already had a tight end. So I'm thinking of receiver that I need, flex position type mentality. I also already had Josh Allen. So it's like a baby stack, I guess at that point in time too. And these things, because you're right now, the big craze is stacking and try to get some stacks in these best balls. I like him as, if I'm looking, when I look at in the format too, at that point in time, I was just looking at the receivers available and the tight ends available, and he was the next man up. Also, if you miss out on one of those early guys like Andrews, Kelsey, even I like Schultz and Pitts or Hawkinson maybe, but he's a guy I've been taking a little bit later because he's a guy that could ascend as well. I know there's a lot less opportunities there for targets with all those studs that you said, all those up and coming guys with Gabe Davis and Cook and all that stuff, but there's always those guys in that later end of the top 10, I guess, or even later, who knows, rounds that come out and pop out of the tight end. So he's one of those guys that I target in that area. Him, Freiermuth, kind of those guys that could go to the next level this year. They're on the rise, and especially if I get stuck without an early one, I like those guys there. Yeah. But he was just a compliment there. When I was looking for a receiver, I saw, and I'm figuring, well, he's in this format. He's the same as, or if not better than any receiver that I thought I was going to get right there at that point in time in that draft. So might as well take him and treat him like a receiver as a flex spot there. So that was my mentality. Also, having Josh Allen, like I said, the baby stack there a little bit added to that as well.
A tight end 10, I think, is where Dawson Knox went. So even the fact that, you grab the elite guy right away, but then your second guy, which I always advocate, and Darren Armani told us on Pros versus Joes on Tuesday night, look, the sweet spot is getting these two tight ends early, not just one, but getting two, which is what you did. I always think that's something that really sets other teams apart. And you got obviously Andrews and Knox here, and I think it sets you up for a lot of success. Knox's real life teammate. We touched on this right at the start when we talked about how the first few rounds of this draft fell for you, Brian. Why were you willing to be the first guy to take a quarterback in Josh Allen? And how likely would you be able to take Josh Allen in maybe the main event or the Footballguys Players Championship, willing to break the quarterback seal, so to speak, and grab him?
Yeah, everybody's
QB adverse?
Yeah, QB adverse early. And some things, like I said, some of those teams, like, for example, that team outside of the box, that was a team I think I took Allen early last year, things like that. I don't want to, you try to figure things out and you try to become so efficient, you try to do things, and then you get pigeonholed to like a certain style of strategy. I think that, now it's about, like I said, shooting for an overall. So things like that, doing something a little different and getting that certain different combinations that, everybody else doesn't have, that increases your chance of these combinations, especially with a guy like Allen. I'm not saying take anybody, but obviously there's a lot to like about Josh Allen. So I was looking, like I said, in this draft too, and in some other drafts, if I'm taking him, I'm just looking to get an edge there. I know it's like, okay, you should fill up on your running backs, receivers, take your quarterback later. There's always a tight end. I get that. And I've won a lot of leagues like that, but I've been better in overall trying to shoot the moon on certain things. And it's not like it's that crazy. He usually goes probably third, fourth round anyway. So it wasn't that crazy. I'm not going to go, shoot too much value, overshoot the value on him and not reach for him, I should say. I'm not going to do that. But if it's certain scenarios, if it's right, it's right. And that's how I'm going to approach it. Like I said, at that point in time, I didn't like any other receivers right there. So I said this is the best guy up.
The only guy you were considering, I think you said was Waddle, right?
Yeah, I was looking at Waddle. I think that was it, really.
Right. It was a big receiver run after you took Allen. Marquise Brown, Waddle, Gabe Davis, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson. But for you, it was either Waddle or Allen there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, this has been awesome. So much fun. I do want to ask you one final question before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday here, Brian. One player that you're super excited about drafting this year in the main event in the FFPC or any format really. And then conversely, a player that you're not, unless something insane happens where he drops several rounds, you're not going to have any shares of this player.
Well, one guy I'm excited about is Pittman. I like Michael Pittman. The only thing I don't like about him is in these contests, he's that week 14 bye, I think. So that's right in the championship game. If and there's a lot, 4,000 on the line in the main event or something. So that's always a struggle. But I probably reach for him a little bit, but I think he's another guy that's going to end up creeping up that second round. He's a guy who got an upgrade at quarterback too. If I remember, like Matt Ryan peppering Julio Jones all the time, but Pittman's third-year guy on the rise, big, tall guy. There's really no other threat there for catches. I kind of like him a lot. He's kind of a guy that I'd probably reach for a little bit, maybe. But guys that I won't touch, there's probably a bunch of them. Zeke, I don't know. I'm just not a Zeke guy. I know, like I said, I shouldn't have any biases, but he's somebody I probably avoid at all costs. When I draft Zeke, I never say, oh, this guy's going to win me the league or his best days are ahead of him. So I don't, that's probably a guy I'll avoid. Anybody, and also just anybody else that's off of one of those two major injuries, the Achilles or an ACL, even if they had a long time or they're 100%. Like I said, those guys, I'll just flat out just fade 100%, not even think about it. Because
just to reiterate, the second year they come back, no problems.
No problem.
It's just that first year you're.
And now listen, it's going to happen where Adrian Peterson comes back with the ACL and rushes for 2,000 yards or whatever. That's going to happen, but more likely than not, that's not going to happen. So
that's an outlier. You're betting on the numbers there.
That's exactly it. And you get sucked in so many times, and I'm just speaking. I'm trying to be more efficient every year, like I said, trying to be, less risky, but you still got to take chances, or otherwise you're gonna, you're gonna lose. So you still have to take some chances. So there's a fine balance there, but I'm trying to just become more efficient. I guess that's the word over the years. Definitely, learned from a lot of mistakes over the years, and that's one of the notes that I always keep in my head about these injury guys, and we'll see what happens. If it burns me, it burns me. More times than not, it's not going to burn me. So,
you're a student of the game. You trust the process. Are you from Pennsylvania? Oh, did I lose Brian? Maybe it was my.
Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Brian, are you from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'm in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton area.
Okay, all right. So Joel Embiid, Philadelphia 76ers, trust the process. You clearly trust your process in high stakes fantasy football.
Yeah, it's been working. So I might, but you always got to keep tweaking. You can always learn from other players too. Like there's so many good players at the FFPC. It's really, not to talk about other places. I played a bunch of them, but FFPC is there's more players in FFPC than anywhere else, and it is the best competition, I think. So, but every site has their own different things, but I end up playing a lot more at the FFPC. I've had a lot more success at the FFPC than anywhere else. So that's what I'm just going to keep doing and keep learning even from the greats. There's some really good players, and just try to stay humble and try to keep building on what I'm learning and keep going. And every year I think that I get better, and I'm going to try to just keep doing that.
Yeah, get better every year. That's the smart plan. And it was smart talking to you tonight. I'm glad we did this. I learned a lot. I think the viewers learned a lot as well. Good luck not only trying to win that free main event entry in 2023 into the FFPC with your Pros versus Joes League, but good luck in all your main events, your Football Guys Players Championship, all your leagues this year, no matter where you're playing. Certainly appreciate you hopping aboard. We follow you on Twitter at Brian_Harris_. Thank you so much, my friend, for doing this. Be good, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Brian Harris, ladies and gentlemen, the 14-time winner in 2021. Oftentimes I bring players on this program and I talk about, they're a 6-time winner, 7-time winner. No, Brian won 14 leagues in the FFPC last year alone. He's won a lot more leagues besides that. Football Guys, Main Event, what have you. Really a treat, and I hope you enjoyed it as I kept them a little bit longer than I said I would. But really good stuff tonight for this edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Now, as a reminder, a program reminder, everybody, this is the final RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown until after the season starts. So we will be back, I want to say September, oh my goodness, it'll probably be September 14th, right around there will be our next episode. But don't worry about it, because we're still going to have a lot of great options for you on this FFPC channel. For instance, this Friday, Farrell Elliott and I cover the live on High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Football Guys Players Championship Draft with some of the best Football Guys players out there. They're going to be drafting live at 9/8 Central. We will cover all the picks for you right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. And then on Monday, we'll turn around and it'll be myself and Dave Terpoli covering one of Dave's $125 entry, $200,000 grand prize FFPC best ball tournament drafts. That will be at 10:30, 9:30 Central on Monday. So we got plenty of best ball, plenty of redraft leagues for live coverage for these leagues going on within the next week or so. And we will go hard until the Football Guys Draftathon coming up in about a about 5 weeks or so roughly now. So that is going to do it for our show tonight. I do want to thank Brian Harris for hopping aboard. I want to thank the FFPC. I want to thank our producer and mutual friend Rob, and then of course our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce. Main event slow drafts ongoing right now at the FFPC. Of course, multiple Football Guys drafts filling up each and every day at myffpc.com. $1 million grand prize in the main event, $500,000 grand prize in the Football Guys Players Championship. You will not have to wait long for those leagues to fill. We're going to have the live main events going off in about a week and a half or so here, and the live FPCs and the slow FPCs going off each and every day. FFPC Best Ball Tournament grand prize is $200,000 this year as opposed to $100,000, which is what it was last year. The prize pool has been doubled to just over $1 million. The Superflex Best Ball Tournament, you can plunk down $35 and try to win 10 grand there, and that is over 90% full, so make sure you're getting in sooner rather than later. Dynasty startups are flying all over the place for the next month or so at myffpc.com, and if you want to play against 11 other owners instead of 1,100 or 11,000 other owners, you can do that at myffpc.com with any of our closed satellite leagues. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We really appreciate it. Remember to give Brian a follow on Twitter, and we will talk with you Friday, 9/8 Central, for the next edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. As far as the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown goes, we will be back in the second week of September. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will talk with you again real soon. Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.